Hi, my name is Lucifer, which is definitely my government name, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make my absolute favorite sweetbread of all time, the orange blossom brioche. Like most sweetbreads, it's a little bit more complex than their lean counterparts, but I promise it's worth it. Every time I make it, there's this wild mob that tries to break into my house to eat it. True story. We're going to get started by heating up 350 grams of milk, which we're going to be using for both the pre-ferment and the decoction, which I believe is the correct term for what we're going to be doing, but please don't quote me on that. We're going to bring the milk to a boil while stirring constantly, and I mean constantly. The second you stop moving your hand, because the mother-in-law from the Reddit story you're listening to just showed up to the wedding wearing white and your jaw dropped, the milk will stick to the bottom of the pan and burn, and you don't want that, trust me. As soon as it breaks into a boil, we're going to take it off the heat and pour 150 grams of it into 125 grams of bread flour and stir until there's no dry flour left. We've essentially just made a milk-based yudain, which is a Japanese technique where you boil water to gelatinize the starches in the flour. Basically, it helps retain moisture, makes your bread softer and fresher for longer, but it also makes the dough overall easier to work with. And we need all the help we can get when it comes to making sweetbreads easier to work with. After the rest of the remaining milk has cooled down to at least 110 degrees Fahrenheit, we're going to pour 100 grams of it into a different container, followed by 5 grams of yeast and 40 grams of bread flour. Give that a really good stir until everything is homogeneous, and boom, here is your pre-ferment. This is going to give our bread a little bit more depth of flavor and dimension, so it tastes more like the Hunger Games and not like Divergent. Now we're going to wait until this pre-ferment triples in size, which for me at 70 degrees Fahrenheit only took about 30 to 45 minutes. If where you are it's hotter, this will happen quicker, and if it's colder, it will take longer. Once it's done fermenting, we're going to mix both the pre-ferment and the decoction together. This does take a slight amount of elbow grease and some patience because these two, just like me and that other girl in high school who was also a social pariah, do not want to be friends. We're going to leave that to double in size, and in the meantime, we're going to start tackling the dough. In a bowl of your stand mixer, pour in 200 grams of white sugar, 5 egg yolks, a pinch of salt, and 2 tablespoons of orange blossom water, or what I like to call it, the forbidden orange juice. Seriously, don't drink it. Do sniff it though. Whisk that until everything is very well incorporated, but not enough to where the mixture starts to pale. Once your pre-ferment is ready, add that in, followed by 335 grams of bread flour, and start kneading. We're using bread flour because, again, sweetbreads are finicky bitches, and they like to make bakers cry, hobbyists and professionals alike, believe me. Bread flour has a high gluten percentage, which means it's literally stronger than all-purpose flour, and we need that extra strength for the dough and the yeast to be able to hold up all of the eggs and butter and sugar that we're adding to it without turning into goop. Once your dough looks a little bit more dough-like, that means you have started to develop a medium rare gluten structure, which is the perfect time to add in your butter, kneading until fully incorporated before adding more. Once you are done adding in all the butter, your dough will anime girl transform into a silky smooth, mega soft, good smelling ball of joy. I personally like kneading a little bit by hand as well, and I highly recommend you do this too, especially if you're using a stand mixer. This is just so you can get a feel and an understanding for your dough. It will exercise what I like to call the baking third eye, kind of like how you should be tasting the food you're cooking as you go, so that if things go wrong, you can adjust accordingly. But for obvious reasons, as bakers, we can't usually eat the things that we're making, so instead we get the information through our hands hands and eyes. Seriously, don't eat raw dough. It is very dangerous. At this point, your dough should be able to breeze through the window pane test, and if it doesn't, it's not ready. Keep kneading. Round that baby out into a ball and let it bulk ferment until doubled in size or until it slightly springs back when poked. At 69 degrees Fahrenheit, this took me about an hour and 45 minutes. You can also proof it in the fridge overnight, which might take anywhere between 12 to 18 hours depending on the temperature of your dough, your fridge, etc. Once it's done proofing, pop the dough into a lightly floured surface and divide it into ideally 4 equal parts. Or you could be a savage like me, I guess, and just eyeball it. I don't really know what was going on that day. Make your 4 pieces of dough into cute little balls and let them do a quick 30-minute bench rest, or however long it takes for the gluten to relax, really. And then shape the balls into cylinders like so. And once again, let them rest about 20 minutes so the gluten is relaxed, man. Or else your braids will turn ugly, and you don't want that. Next, we're going to roll them out to about 20 inches in length. I feel like that's right. I didn't write it down for some reason. So yeah. I did have to let the strands rest for an additional time before I was able to roll them out to their full length, which is perfectly fine. I think a good skill to work on when it comes to making any sort of bread is to be able to decrypt what your dough is trying to tell you. And in this case, mine was telling me that it needed a little bit of a nap. Once you have 4 perfectly even strands, the braiding shall commence. I won't lie to you, I cut out 2 failed braiding attempts off of this video before my muscle memory finally kicked in and remembered how to make a 4-strand braid. Honestly, I will probably forgive you if you need to look up a different video on how to do it. I'm 26 and my sister still has to braid my hair, so that's that. When you get to the end of your braid, make sure you pinch the ends together so they don't come apart. And it's okay if the beginning and the end of your braid are a little bit thinner than the middle, because you're going to be overlapping those in the mold. Once your braid is done, put it in a lined and greased 8-inch pan. You can go bigger with the pan, but you cannot go smaller, trust me. Leave the bread to do a final proof until it's big and puffy and beautiful, which at 69 degrees Fahrenheit took me a little bit under an hour and a half. And in the meantime, we're going to make the sugar topping, which is only the most important part of this recipe. We will need 2 tablespoons of white sugar and 1/8 of a teaspoon of orange blossom water. You're going to massage that until it becomes kind of like wet sand and is able to clump and hold its shape when you squeeze the sugar. If you get it any wetter than this, the sugar will melt during baking and it will look god-awful. Once the braid is done proofing, carefully wash it with egg wash and very extremely generously sprinkle it with orange blossom sugar. Bake low and slow at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for around 45 minutes or until the internal temperature reaches 190 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Mine looks a little bit toasty because your girl forgot it in the oven for an additional 7 minutes. But hey, it was still the greatest thing I've ever eaten, so mistakes happen. And just to be safe, since not all ovens are created equal, I recommend you start checking for doneness at the 40-minute mark. Also, if your bread is browning a little bit too quickly, give it a cute little aluminum foil hat. I do it with mine every time because my oven is, for obvious reasons, the hottest of them all. And ta-da! Now listen to this. the most iconic showstoppery brioche of all time. This is a bit of a special occasion kind of bread, the type I whip out if I really want to impress, and it has yet to fail its purpose. And if you don't believe me, then your house stinks, and maybe you should make this recipe so it smells better in there. Boom, roasted. Anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video and give this recipe a try. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them down below in the comments. Bye!